So you grew up a little bit different than I did. I'm an only child. I know you come from a big family. So talk to me about, where you grew up, your family, background.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm the opposite of you. Basically, for me, is I grew up in a typical Latino Mexican culture household. I'm the youngest out of 11 kids. Grew up in the Pacific Northwest Seattle area. Not very much in terms of resources. I remember growing up, we had to go to the food bank. So it was less than middle class. Like we were barely surviving. I remember my brothers would have to get jobs as well and would be working to essentially help my mom out and my dad. And, where unfortunately, my dad was not very much so around growing up, but it was a lot of my brothers taking the reins, helping my mom, and essentially learning a lot of different life lessons and things from my brothers, not necessarily like my mom or my dad. And, in terms of the Mexican culture, right, the Latino culture is very similar in terms of whether you're Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican, Ecuador, right, all of those different countries. I think that at the end of the day, it's we're very much so on discipline. Whippings, we still believe in whippings,
Yeah,
right?
big time.
The chancla, right, is the well-known case of like, when you act up, you're gonna get, whipped upon, and that serves a purpose, right? I think that's there to let people know that, hey, listen, if you act up, there's gonna be consequences. That's really what I experienced, is just like a lot of tough love. Was pretty much raised by my brothers, helping my mom out. Everything was very family oriented, very much so, hey, stick to what you know, don't venture out, follow the rules, don't make too much noise, don't draw too much attention. Very safe and secure, right? Especially with being that my parents came out here many, many years ago trying to find a better life, right, for every single one of us. It was just one of those deals where we had a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of challenges, but I'm grateful for all of it. I'm grateful for the whole experience.
So what's the age difference between, like you said, you were the youngest. So between you and like your oldest sibling, how many years are you guys apart?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I am the youngest out of 11. It's like probably 25 or 30 years difference between me and the oldest. And so I've always kind of been like the black sheep in terms of the youngest, the one that's always kind of gone against conventional wisdom, always questioned everything, and where I kind of envisioned myself and always saw myself as being successful in something, in some area. And I think that's where really I came in and made a difference, right? Everybody was like, hey, go to school, get your education. And for a lot of my brothers and sisters, that was the pinnacle of success in terms of being able to go out, get an education, get a nice job, and work at that company or in that industry, in that space until you retire, right? That was the pinnacle of success. And you think about it, that's a great pinnacle, right, of success for most people, right? And I think that I came to realize very early that I wasn't most people, and I was different, and I had higher and bigger aspirations. And so, really kind of going into the age ranges, we're all 2 years apart. My oldest sister has got to be 25 or so plus years older than me.
That's insane. Wow. Yeah, again, totally different than me. I grew up only child, which was weird because my mom grew up in Venezuela. My dad's Palestinian. So like for a Middle Eastern Latino household, you'd expect at least 4 or 5 kids. Because I grew up like all my Mexican homies, same thing, was at least like 4 or 5 was just like a guarantee almost. But 11, that's incredible. So you're the only one, I'm assuming, that's like left Washington.
Yeah, interestingly enough, all my brothers and sisters are all still in Washington. There's a small town called Marysville where a lot of my family members are like 10 minutes away from each other. So they're very, very close knit. And I think that plays into the Latino culture, right? A very family oriented. I think it's great. And obviously there's always where you have that aspect of, hey, everybody's so close together, but then there's the laziness of like not getting together and taking it for granted because everybody works and lives so close. I'm the only one who's actually ventured out, left the state, and has really just questioned everything. All my brothers, except for one, is gonna be like the closest to me, right? Because all the brothers are like really older than me. A lot of them have like homes in Mexico, and they're like, yeah, we're getting ready to retire. And I'm like, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The closest brother to me is 2 years older than me. And it's interesting because we grew up together and we essentially like shared a room. That's how, essentially poor we were. We didn't have the ability to have our own rooms. It was me and my brother. And it's so funny because we were literally the complete opposite of each other. My brother was a computer, I guess you could call him like a computer guy. Growing up, he had like straight A's and was like pretty much an engineer, right? He has a computer science major. He was growing up playing a lot of the like Stargate, World of Warcraft, those kind of games, right? And for me, like I was like, how do you even find that appealing, right? But yeah, it was interesting, our dynamic, because we're literally on the complete opposite sides of the spectrum. He's very detailed, analytical, computer science techie. I'm more big picture, high level, more of a risk taker, more of looking at the end goal, the vision. And so that was an interesting dynamic growing up with him. We had a lot of, fights, arguments, never really saw eye to eye. But yeah, we have a wide range of my family and they're all in Washington. I'm the only one who's left the actual state.
And where in Mexico is your family from?
The majority of the family is from Guadalajara. And also there's a small little town, which is actually the birthplace of mariachi, which is
Nice.
Tecalitlan, where a lot of my family grew up as well. Mm-hmm. And they have houses there, but it's a small little town. Everybody pretty much knows each other. It's a lot of older individuals, a lot of folks that are retired. Obviously there's, still some younger crowds there, but it's pretty much more for like a very chill, lax type of experience. And a lot of older folks go there to retire. But yeah, pretty much Jalisco, Guadalajara, and then Tecalitlan, which is a couple hours from Guadalajara.
Beautiful. And walk me through that process. You being obviously like the black sheep of the family, the youngest one, and then coming to Miami. We know, the situation now, but you said you moved here, 2020?
2021.
Okay, 2021, Miami. And then a little bit. You spent like 4 or 5 months, 6 months in San Diego.
Yeah, 6 months San Diego.
And before San Diego, you were in Washington.
You're right.
So what was that process between, let's say, like end of high school until you left to San Diego and Miami? That time frame. Walk us through like what were you working on? Did you go to school in Washington? What were sort of things that you were doing that eventually led you to move out and venture on your own?
Yeah, so I would say right out of high school, I had aspirations to go to college. I went to a local community college. It was a scenario where I needed to leave my house because unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I look at it as fortunately, I was essentially kicked out of my house, 18, had to fend for myself. And so what I would do is I would work full time. I would work nights at a lumber yard. And then in the mornings I'd go to school.
Okay.
And so I did that for a good 2 years and got my 2-year degree. And then I came across like some network marketing stuff. So like you think about Amway, those types of business opportunities, right? And me being new kind of to the entrepreneurship space, I was like really enthralled with that, really kind of resonated with me. And then I really questioned school. Is this really something that I want to do? And so I had kind of like a come to Jesus moment where I was like, should I spend my time going to school and getting education when I can really just kind of become an entrepreneur and go that route? Because I don't see myself being a normal person, right? Normal kind of 9-to-5 job. So did that for a little bit and had a little bit of minor success, but then it kind of fell off. And then I left school and then I started to do construction, hard manual labor, made a lot of money. I was in the trades. I was an iron worker, probably the most difficult and like the hardest job I ever had to do. I think it's voted 10 top most dangerous jobs in the world.
Wow.
Because I would literally be doing like the placing the iron, the rebar, doing the connections on the buildings. You think about the infrastructure of the buildings, right? Like going up and connecting these actual beams, these columns.
Yeah.
So it was super heavy duty, hardcore work, but the money was good, right? In the trades. And then from there, I then was tired of it and decided I need to find a better way. And then that's where I got an opportunity with a buddy of mine to work at my first office job doing sales. And I remember coming into that like so happy, so excited every day. I remember coming in and being like, gosh, everybody's so happy to be here. Everybody's saying good morning, right? And I hadn't experienced that, right? Because I had really just previously known construction, hard work, manual labor. And so I had to get into this like this corporate America type of atmosphere and environment. And so it was fantastic. I loved it. And then that's kind of where I started getting into sales.
What type of sales was it?
It was IT sales.
Okay.
So we were selling essentially IT solutions, infrastructure, architecture. We would sell, essentially reselling all the top name brands. You think about HP, Dell, Microsoft solutions, software. We came in and we were like the experts in the actual solutions of what these companies wanted to accomplish. And then we would leverage and utilize the partnerships and relationships with these technology partners to actually put together these solutions, right? So did that for a couple years, and then I went into sales working for a hydraulic kit for excavator company. So basically, we provided construction companies hydraulic kits for their excavators to run certain machinery. So you think about the thumbs that pick up, like gravel or, do demolition.
Right.
Or like the drills that drill into different buildings or that drill into the ground to like remove stumps or whatever. Or like the ones that are in the recycling yards that chop up whatever, all the different cars and, recycling. So I did that for a couple years. And then that's really where I guess the vision came in, because I was with somebody, I was in a relationship and I was kind of confused. I was almost at the point where I was like, is this really what I'm going to be? Like, is this all there is? And so I left the girl that I was with. I made a pact really with myself to like, you know what? I'm going to do whatever it takes to become successful, to become an entrepreneur, whatever it takes, right? That kind of mentality. And so that led me on my journey. That was back in like 2015, led me on my journey of just like, quitting my job with like my 401k of like 5K. And like, I think I had like 5K in the bank. So like 10K, and I just quit my job and I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. And I think that's the biggest thing, is I took a leap and I just burned bridges. I'm like, my back's against the wall and I'm going to figure it out. And so I then was doing like consulting for local businesses. I was doing like SEO, digital marketing. And I did that for a good 2 to 3 years. And then, went through all the struggles. I moved out to a small 10 by 10 office where I literally was doing my work from. And I actually moved out of my other place that I was living in because I was like, listen, I really want to put myself in a position where I'm very much so uncomfortable and where I need to do whatever it takes to figure things out and just be focusing on myself, go in the dark and figure it out. And so for a good 2.5 years, I was staying in this 10 by 10 office and just pretty much essentially living there, working there.
Yeah.
In the mornings, going to take a shower at the gym, coming back, going to work, and essentially, living my whole life through there. So it was a dark time, but it was necessary. It was a time for me to really go within and really go through all of my trauma, my issues, my problems, and really accept everything, acknowledge it, and really build up my mental fortitude, build up my mentality of like understanding, hey, everything happened for a reason. People did the things that they did because they thought that was the best thing for them or for the situation. All the negatives of the problems that happened, it is what it is. I'm not going to let it affect me and who I am. And so a lot of internal reflection, acknowledging different things that happened to me when I was younger growing up, right? A lot of traumas built up young. And so just going through all of that and accepting it all. And that really was a big weight off my shoulder. And just building up my mindset, that really allowed me to just continue to be positive, right? Obviously, I was in my 10 by 10 office and like my current reality didn't depict where I saw myself, right? And that's something that I would do in my journals. I would write where I wanted to be and where I saw myself as if it was already there, right? So I did a lot of that and just kind of really focusing on and being grateful on where I'm at and what I have, even though it's not physically in my reality yet. And then the pandemic comes in, right? The pandemic hits, and that was the biggest game changer for me. Obviously, a lot of unfortunate situations happened with that. A lot of people lost their lives. But you think about it, in any kind of scenario, you can be the best of times or it can be the worst of times. And it's really on perspective, right? And so that point really was the inflection point for me, where it allowed me to go out and get a lot of access to funding, a lot of access to capital. My courses started to really surge as well on the enrollments because everything was just online. Nobody could go out and do anything. So it was inevitable that the courses just kind of naturally started to grow and get a lot more exposure. So from there, right, that was like 2020. Then it allowed me to move to San Diego and stayed in San Diego for 6 months and just kind of building up my courses. I was creating more courses. And then 2020, at the end of that year, 1st of January 2021, that's when I came to Miami.
Wow. So yeah, that's a good transition. You know, obviously, I think the physical labor that you went through with construction and iron, I mean, that sort of physical pain made you think, like, obviously right now with digital marketing, like, yes, there's stress, there's Zoom meetings, there's calls, but it's not like being outside, you know, doing all that physical work. And I think it's a good experience for a lot of young men. Like, I did junk removal, and I remember one job with a pocket knife. Actually, I had to cut up a whole pool. So the couple had told me that they left the pool, that they took out all the pieces and everything, and it was ready to just pack up and go. But there was still so much water left. In order to get the water out, I had to like literally just start cutting, you know, the whole thing through. And I remember that I bid the job like at $350. And the lady told me the best she could do was $250. And I was like, all right, I'll still do it. Yeah. And she saw me out there for like 2 hours, you know, doing all that. And then eventually she gave me like an extra $100 at the end. So I remember those, you know, I remember things like that. Like whenever I'm like stressed, like I'm working behind a laptop. You know what I mean? Like there's dudes like building America and doing all these difficult things. So I do think it's a necessary thing, because you think of those moments. And then when you're doing something like marketing and transition, you're like, no, I want location freedom. I want to be, you know, you take that pain. You're like, okay, what do I want better than this? You know, like you said, the pay can be great and everything, but if you don't work, God forbid something happens to your thumb, your leg, you know what I mean? You get injured on the job or something like that. Like if you're not working, your pay is going to be directly tied to how many hours you put in and work versus the value you can create with something like a digital product or an acquisition or a business, right, that has multiple components where it's not necessarily tied to your physical health and whatnot. So I definitely like that experience that you carried. So yeah, what was something, I guess, what was a wild moment in that transition before you acquired your first business? What was your favorite and worst job that you had before, or favorite and worst endeavor or side hustle?
Interestingly enough, I think I've only had like 4 jobs in my entire life. So I worked construction. So coming out of high school and like going to college, I worked at a lumber yard. And then from there, I worked construction, right? I was doing the ironworking and the trades. And then I did sales at a tech company, you know, selling IT infrastructure. And then my last job was the hydraulic kits. So that's 4 jobs that I've had my entire life. I would say like my most favorite, the sales coming into my first sales job, which is selling the IT infrastructure, because it really just gave me a whole nother glimpse into a whole nother world, man. Like you think about it, I was working construction, I was working lumberyard, where I had to like literally go to work and I'd get dirty, and like I'd had to take a shower before I had to, you know, was able to go out and like do stuff. Where in this job, doing sales, selling the IT infrastructure, you know, you had to dress nice, you had to wear slacks, wear a nice button up, and everybody was just like happy to be there, you know, with a smile on their face, right? So that really changed my paradigm in terms of like, this is a whole nother world, right? And so that really was the foundation of like my sales experience, my knowledge, my understanding of like, you know, this is different. There's a whole nother world outside of construction and working hard and just using your body, right? Where you can use your mental aptitude, you can use your, you know, communication, and it's a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more cushy, right? You don't got to worry about the cold. You don't got to worry about it being freezing, right? Especially out, you know, out in the Seattle, Washington area where it's cold all the time. It's like 40 degrees, 30 degrees is like normal, especially
Cloudy,
during the
rain,
winter.
yeah.
During the winter, you think about it, it's freezing, and then the rain too. And the rain is just because it's a natural part of the Pacific Northwest. You're not going to not go to work because it's raining. You got to still come in, right? Especially if it's freezing, right? I remember one time specifically, I was working at this job, and there was like a number of us that would go in like this little tent area. I think it was a heater. And we would go in there like every 45 minutes because it was literally just so freezing. You'd have to go in there for like 5 minutes and like just get warmed up a little bit and then go back out and work. So it was just a different environment, man. Being able to come into an office setting, everybody's in a good mood, everybody's happy, smile on their face, good morning. And I guess my most favorite of just kind of like coming into this whole new world.
Was there a boss or a mentor, within this job or even outside of it during this period that sort of helped guide you, or what was sort of that experience like?
Good question. I think in this scenario, yes, I had my sales manager. Individual's name is Brandon, just like a natural born salesperson, could speak well, articulate himself very well, confident as heck, and he would really be able to zoom in and zoom out and give a lot of great feedback and advice. And he was one of the first times that I heard the term perception is reality from him. And yeah, he played a big factor in terms of like me understanding a lot of sales foundations, a lot of frameworks in that particular industry, right? And just in sales in general. But yeah, he was a big part of my growth within that organization for sure.
Okay, nice. And outside of him, what was sort of influencing you and guiding you? Obviously, nowadays, I feel like we have direct access to a lot of people's thoughts. I mean, there's people that constantly recording podcasts, there's short form, there's Twitter, we can tap into people's experiences and perspectives. At that time, who were some of the people that you were following, looking up to? What type of knowledge were you consuming, books, whatnot?
Yeah, honestly, there wasn't a whole lot because that was back in like 2013, 2012. So, gosh, I mean, that's a long time ago, almost like 15 years ago, right? I didn't really have anybody. And at that time, I was just kind of more existing. I wasn't really living. I was just kind of like, hey, I'm going to work. I'm coming home. I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to have some drinks. I'm going to go out and party, right? So I didn't have any type of the aspiration of like to better myself. It was just kind of like I had almost in a sense like accepted my fate of like, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm going to be. I'm going to be just an average, normal dude, right? So I really didn't have anybody that I was following at all. It was more of just like, I was just a cog in the system. I didn't have any type of mentor or anybody I looked up to at all.
Okay. So then what was the sort of pivoting moment, or was there ever like a click or just an experience situation you had where you felt like you went from existing to living?
Yeah. So I would say it had to be when that pandemic hit. And I made the decision to move to San Diego. And I remember moving to San Diego, and I remember going out to this park, Balboa Park. And it's a beautiful, beautiful park by the zoo. Beautiful palm trees, beautiful buildings, architecture, Spanish architecture. And just walking in that little infrastructure in that whole entire park, and just like looking all around and putting my hands up and just being like, wow, like I'm here. Right. And especially after writing in my journal that I was living in San Diego 2.5 years prior, right? I was putting it in my journal that, hey, I'm grateful that I'm living here. I'm grateful that I'm living in San Diego by the beach and all that. Obviously prior to me actually living there, right, in reality. So it was more of just a surreal kind of appreciative gratitude moment where I was like, wow, I'm here. Like, I've accomplished my goal. And that was, I guess, a turning point for me of like, all right, now I'm living. All of the vision that I had, the goals, the aspirations, it's just within arm's reach.
Yeah, you mentioned gratitude a lot, and I feel like that was such an underrated component because normally it's like, oh, Thanksgiving, what are you thankful for? But on a day-to-day basis, I remember the first time I saw, it was a guy with one leg, and I was a kid, and I was just kind of like staring because I was like, I'd never seen that before. My dad was like, I bet you feel pretty happy now that you got 2 legs. So it was those types of situations where, like you were saying, when you're expressing that gratitude, especially if you can do it more frequent basis. I was talking to a homegirl of mine and a couple of buddies, and we're talking about the workforce and how certain offices have like a 27% increase in productivity when the managers show a little bit more appreciation or express gratitude. People want to feel like someone acknowledges them, right? Like they're alive, that they're, proud of what they're doing and whatnot. So, besides gratitude, what are some other, I guess, mental frameworks and ideas, sort of mental shifts that you've adapted and learned from that have, helped you on the experience with, with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I would say reframing everything. Reframing everything to always see the positive in all situations. So you think about getting into a, let's say a car accident, right? There's the initial shock and awe. You get into a little fender bender or whatever. There's a shock and awe. Is everybody okay? Is everybody all right? And then there's maybe a little bit of frustration that comes in. But at the end of the day, it's just like reframing it as to, I'm grateful that I'm alive, right? And, the car is just a car. It can get fixed. It can get, updated, whatever. But just the reframing of every single thing that happens. This is a learning experience. It sucks. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. What are the things that I can control? And if I can't control it, if it's out of my control, okay, well, why am I going to spend energy worrying about that or focusing on that? I immediately bring it in and I analyze it. Okay, what can I do? If there's nothing I can do, I then just put it out there into the ether and just let it go.
Gotcha.
Because there's no reason for me to hold on to it and to keep worrying about it. Because what does that bring? Nothing but more stress to you. And it affects how you interact and just how you are, right? It can have a complete mental and physical toll on you. Your mind affects your body. If you're in a stressed out state, right, your body's going to reflect that, right? You think about your body language, all of that. You're communicating things naturally through your body language. So for me, the mental frameworks really all center around reframing everything and always looking at the positive in each scenario and always looking at a lesson to be learned, because that's going to help you and aid you into when something like that comes up again. And it also builds up your mental fortitude, right? Like most people are going to, who haven't worked on themselves, right? They're going to, let's say, like frustrated or being where it affects their mood, their day, their week, their month. Where for me, and I think most entrepreneurs that have really mastered their mind, I think they're going to just accept it, acknowledge it. Is there something that can be done to it for this particular moment? Yes, no, okay. What can be done? If not, nothing. Then move on. That's it, right? I have had a lot of scenarios where, especially in like, for example, payment processing, a simple example. I've had not a lot, I'd say a few different scenarios where I've had money being held up, right? We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars held up for whatever reason. They needed to verify information, and then for weeks, right? Affecting cash flow, affecting my operations. And it's like, gosh, it sucks, but what can I do about it, right?
Right.
There's not much I can do. And so of just like, listen, what can I learn from this? What can I do better next time to make sure it doesn't happen again, or that I mitigate it? Because you're always going to have problems. You're always going to have stuff happen that is unfortunate, that sucks, that's going to deter you. But it's your ability to overcome those and see them as learning experiences, to see them as positives, and to acknowledge them for what they are.
No, absolutely. Like you said, you're always going to have problems, but there's different types of problems, right? There's the problems of like, dang, I don't know where the next meal is coming from. And then there's other problems like you mentioned with the payment processing. Like I have a, successful business and some money got held up. Now I'm trying to figure out, if I might payroll in the next couple of weeks. So there's different levels, there's different types of problems. And, obviously there's some more preferred to have than others. Yeah. So in terms of, I wanted to talk about like certain, obviously you were talking about, going back to 2012, 2013, there wasn't as much influence in the online space as there is now. But over time, was there any books or experiences or any sort of, resource? I know you mentioned Ty Lopez one time to me before. What was something you've come across? There's a book I read when I was in high school called The Alchemist. I don't know if you're familiar with it. There's a term they use it in the book in Arabic that we use called maktub. So going back to what you're saying about things happen, for a reason, in Arabic when we say maktub, it means literally it's written. So like if something happens, like that was the way God wrote the whole script of the world. So like it's written. So it's not necessarily something that was in my hands. It was just something that was already there. So I remember that book, reading it, and it's a word that we use often. Is there anything else like that similar, a passage or an author or, anything like that?
Yeah, so in terms of like inspiration and to kind of getting through my journey, I think Ty Lopez was a big inspiration for me. 2015, I think it was, when I was like kind of in that stage where I needed to figure something out, right? Like I know that my life was just kind of like in this limbo, and I needed a change. And I came across Ty Lopez, one of his videos for like the 67 steps. And that content really helped me build the solid foundation in terms of learning about mindset, learning about reframing, accepting things for what they are, building that mental fortress, and just business, a lot of business stuff, right? And then from there from like 2015 to like 2017, those 2 years, because 2017 I quit my job, so like 2015 to like end of 2016, those 2 years is when I essentially went down in the rabbit hole of books. Like I probably have like over 200 books in my Audible, where I was reading like everything from business psychology, human psychology, behavioral economics, to persuasion, creative arts, like all just different subjects, different topics that were like not even related to each other. But I did it because I wanted to get a wide range of different topics so that I could have a lot of different things connect. And that's what I realized, is that with reading like a book on behavioral psychology or behavioral economics, and then reading a book on sales and marketing and like mindset, there was a lot of patterns. I think one of my favorite books, there's a few, I would say probably one of my top is the Outwitting the Devil, from the author of Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Napoleon, yeah.
And it's a book that I think was like, I think they had hid it for a while and they hadn't released it, but it's basically goes into conversations that he goes through where he's like, I don't know if he's imagining or he's having these conversations with the devil, and the devil's like telling him exactly what he would do and what he does to keep people in poverty, keep people, held back in kind of the status quo. That was a great, fantastic book. Another book, I would say, an NLP book by, I think, Joseph O'Connor. That's another book that really helped me. And
what's the NLP stand for?
NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's basically the study of the structure of our subjective experience. Basically, that each one of us is living our own universe, our own experience, and that we have our own ways of operating, our own software programming that we're running, right? Just like with any computer, we're running our own software programming individually based off of our past experiences, family, our environment, and then it goes into the ability to then achieve your outcomes. Essentially getting you to understand how the human mind works, how we operate, and how we operate on certain programming, and then how can we get to where we are currently to where we want to be, right? What's that gap look like, and what are the steps that we need to do to get to where we want to be, right? Getting the outcomes that we want. And I would say, to sum it up, really, it's really about modeling success and about getting the outcomes that we want. Like, what is the outcome that you want, right? And I think when you can really start from the outcome, right, the end goal of, I want to be living in Miami, I want to be making X amount of money, I want to be driving X car, that's the outcome. And then you can look at, okay, how do I reverse engineer that? How do I reverse engineer that so that I can lay out the steps from A to Z of, this is what I need to do in step 1, step 2, step 3, so that I can get to where I'm at. So it's a very powerful tool that helps you essentially outline your outcome and achieve your outcomes and your goals. Couple other books, I would say Psycho-Cybernetics.
I was thinking of that book, yeah.
That's the book that really talks about a lot of mental frameworks, pretty much identity, the vision that you have of yourself, how you see yourself, right? Because the external world is really a physical representation, manifestation of your internal world, right? So you, as an individual, see yourself as a certain way, you act in accordance, the way you dress, the way you perceive yourself, and how you see yourself in the world. And then you go out and you act that way, right? In public, in the outside world, and then people treat you accordingly. So that was a fantastic book. I mean, there's so many different other books, but I would say Psycho-Cybernetics, Outwitting the Devil, and then the NLP from Joseph O'Connor are probably the top 3 books, I would say, in terms of the mental side, like mentality wise, and really
And the
being
impact.
Yes. Obviously, there's other books on like business and entrepreneurship, but I think mentality, right? Mindset is the most important part of all success and all achievement, because you can have all the technical skills, you can learn all the marketing techniques, tactics, you can know how to run a marketing campaign, how to run Facebook ads, Google ads. But if you don't have the proper mindset in place and the foundation built there, then at any given time that you go through any type of struggles or problems or issues, you're going to easily give up, and you're going to play a victim. You're going to look for ways to point faults at others versus looking inwardly. So mentality, your mindset's the most important part that needs to get developed first and foremost, and then learning the actual technical details of how to actually do different stuff within, like, let's say, the marketing space or whatever space you want to be in. But yes, mindset is number one.
Yeah, I thought it was crazy in psycho-cybernetics where the plastic surgeon, would do work on people, and he would show them the mirror of the new procedure, and they would still see their old self. They'd be like, you didn't do anything. He'd be like, what do you mean? I changed this, I changed this, I changed that. We did all this different work. And they still, were in disbelief that he did anything at all. They're just like, no, they still saw their old self. And so, that journey, like you were saying about what ends up happening in the physical world is just a process of, what's going on internally. It's insane. I see the what's it called, the Tom Ford box there. And we were talking about Tom Ford earlier. It was one of the GQ episodes where someone came in, he was dressed, and he owned a few restaurants, but he wanted to own a chain of restaurants. And Tom Ford was telling him, was like, well, dress like the person you see yourself envision, the person you envision becoming.
Yes.
And that's who you become. So if in the future you want to be a dude that has 25, franchise restaurants, whatever, across the world, then dress already like you're the dude that carries yourself that way. So what are little changes in terms of, lifestyle, day-to-day living, little things like that you did to help yourself, think clearer and basically, eventually become its own, I guess you could say, fulfilling prophecy of becoming the man that you envision to become?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So one of the things that I did and still do to this day is I have this thing, this document that I created. It all stemmed from Sam Ovens. Shout out to him. He's like an old internet entrepreneur and a marketer. I think he runs School now. He's like the co-founder of like School with
nice. Hormozy,
yes, right. Hormozy. So basically, he came up with this thing called the Alchemy of Self, and where it's a document where you outline like who you want to be. You put images and pictures, kind of like a vision board, right? And you outline different types of people that you want to aspire to be like, different types of goals that you have for yourself, kind of your identity. Hey, my name is Juan. I live here. This is how much money I make. This is how I dress. This is how I act. This is, my characteristics. These are different affirmations. These are different pictures of me, right? This is how I want to aspire to you. And so I did that for the longest time and still do today. And that has really helped me become everything that I had envisioned, because I remember looking back and looking at different pictures of, like, I would put pictures in there of people that wearing nice suits, that were successful, that had, a certain look and feel to them. And I always saw myself as like those types of individuals. And so, like, the last few years, man, it's been a heck of a ride, and just, feeling to see that I've essentially turned into that individual, because, I actually put it on my vision, right? And I put it into my alchemy of self of, like, this is how I see myself. This is how I view myself. I started getting into getting suits, getting jackets, dressing like the person that I, saw myself as. Started smoking cigars. I started drinking Pellegrino, sparkling water, right? So doing the things that successful people do, right? And kind of stepping into that mindset and that persona of, like, I'm a successful person. This is what I do naturally, normally. It's just a regular type of experience for me, right? It's not a big deal. I'm used to it, right? Because then it becomes second nature to you. And then, subconsciously, then it just becomes a norm for you. then you being successful and you acting as somebody who's, smoking cigars, makes a lot of money. You think about what it represents, right? People who smoke cigars, who drink, maybe nice alcohol, nice tequila, great favorite drink of mine, Clase Azul. That's something that for me is the ability to show that, hey, you know what? Like, I'm him, right? I've been him. And by being able to act in accordance, right? It's all just came to fruition. It's all come to reality. So I would say, yes, you always want to make sure that you are addressing the par. I think it goes in terms of the spiritual side. Be, do, have. So you be the person and you step into that mental framework of, hey, I am him, I am this guy, I accomplished this, I am this person that is able to do X, Y, Z, right? You do those things, right, that are in line with that persona, that identity, and then you have all those things that come with it, right? And so I would say being able to put together the alchemy of self, of seeing yourself who you want to be, is critically important. So you have a vision, you have aspiration to become. And, because for me, like, I never used to wear suits. I never used to, dress up nice and wear button-ups, wear, full custom-made tailored suits until recently, just maybe like last few years, because I saw myself as that, right? And it doesn't happen immediately, right? There's a little bit of a time gap where you start to there's a little bit of tension there. Like, is this who I am? Is this, is it really who I am? And then your old you wants to kind of push you back a little bit and bring you back, like, hey man, this is out of your comfort zone. You want you to come back to kind of who you really are or whatever, right? So it's all that voice in your head. But once you can really outline who you want to be, who you want to become, and you start acting in accordance of that, then things start to naturally kind of unfold. And so I would say, yes, that alchemy of self, kind of the document of laying out who I want to be, my identity, has served me extremely well.
So obviously, you said you grew up in a large household, the youngest of 11. How important is, future family to you, legacy, marriage, that sort of thing? How do you view those concepts?
Yeah, I think naturally the Hispanic culture is very much so family oriented. I think there's obviously going to be two sides of the spectrum on this, both of the polarities. On the positive side, we're very family oriented. We stick together very much so. You have family members, even after they get married, sometimes will stay at home and live there for a while. People will live there, especially the gals will live there for, late 20s until they find somebody to get married. Everybody's together with the carne asadas, right? So I think that's great, but it also, on the other side of that, it has its negatives where, because the family is so close knit and tight knit, that anything outside of the norm is kind of seen as like, whoa, what are you doing? Like, that's different. You going out wanting to start a business or be an entrepreneur or do this, do that, like, it's kind of like frowned upon. It's like, hey man, like, just be safe. Just get a job, get an education. Don't, take too much risk. And that's what I would have experienced, because going through my trials and tribulations, if I ever would have gone back to my family, I love them to death, but I would never take their advice in terms of, business entrepreneurship. Because if I would have gone back, they would have been like, hey, you're going through all this stuff. Just get a job. Just, be comfortable. Just be safe, right? And I get it. I get where they're coming from. And I think that's the mentality of a lot of the Latino culture is we want to be safe. We want to just, make a nice living. And there's nothing absolutely wrong with that. Completely, I get it. And, they serve a purpose, right? And there's no judgment at all. I think there are people that need to work and that have a job, and that's just, the way that things are for most people. And the Latin culture is great because of the family, but it's very much so frowned upon and questioned when you get out of the norm. And so I would say that the family culture is fantastic. It's great. There's also the issues with, going out and venturing on your own. I see myself as somebody, because all my family is literally married. Like, I'm the youngest out of the 11 kids, and all of my brothers and sisters are all married. They all have kids. I'm the only one who doesn't have any kids. But I'm also looking at things from the perspective of somebody who is successful, who is, productive, who's confident, who's done what he needs to do to, become the best version of myself, right? And it's obviously an ongoing type of experience. But for me, I look at it as, yes, I eventually want to settle down and want to be with somebody and, have kids and all that. Marriage, unless perhaps it may be in Mexico or something, I think marriage is a questionable thing for me, because I think the laws are very much so outdated and against the men here in the US. I think there's so many issues and problems. I think, talk about, modern dating and just modern relationships. I think, and this is not towards, any group in particular, but I think most modern women are looking at marriage as kind of more of just the wedding experience of this, like the experience of it, but don't really understand what it takes to be like an actual wife and the duties that come with that, right? There's always that honeymoon phase of like, hey, I'm gonna get married and all this stuff, and because their friends and their family members are married.
It's exciting, yeah.
Right, but I think that's where a lot of them really fall short. And when they get into the relationship, then they see how much of a struggle it is and how much of a challenge it is and how much work, right? Then there's the incentives for them to actually leave the relationship, right? They have, alimony, child support, all these different things where at the end of the day, if they don't feel like being in a relationship any longer, they can end it, and you're pretty much screwed as an individual, as a normal dude. Just think about a normal guy who works 9 to 5, gets married, and is loyal, is a good guy, and then she decides to leave him. She's gonna collect alimony, child support, and he's pretty much screwed. Maybe even take half the house or the house, right? So I think just from my perspective also, I want to focus more on the culture, right? I want to focus more on the culture of the Latinos, where the family, right? That's why, I mentioned the family aspect of it. I love the family orientation. I love, you think about an average entrepreneur, successful dude who's looking for a gal is going to be looking for somebody who's like attractive, but also, very feminine, very, fit, friendly, cooperative, which is a buzzword that a lot of people don't even like to, listen to and hear, because it seems like, oh, like you got to boss me around or whatever. But really it's about, hey, just following the program. And you think about like an ideal girl, she doesn't really like to go out. She likes to read books. Maybe she has a, good job, but she's very family oriented. She, is essentially very ingrained in her family tradition and her culture. So yeah, I think for myself, like I said, I'm really looking at settling down here in the next few years or so, and having it be somebody in the Latin culture, and really building upon those family culture foundations.
Yeah, Mexicans generally seem to be a bit more traditional and conservative.
Yes.
I grew up with a lot of homies, and even I want to say, like, in Spanish, a lot of times similar to Arabic, you mention God in a lot of expressions, a lot of phrases. Like I remember even in Brazil, I heard a Portuguese guy. The guy was leaving the store, and he says basically like "Que vaya con Dios," like "May God be with you." And like our word goodbye in English, that's where it comes from. May God be with you. So there's little things in the language and the culture where you still get to feel like there's a higher presence. Like family, God, church. There's a role of something bigger than us being in place, and. Yeah. So, and then obviously, that might be in Mexico, that's maybe in the Middle East. But in terms of like, living in Miami, what would you say is maybe a unique, crazy experience you've had, or like, a wild dating story?
A crazy, wild dating story. They've definitely been interesting. I've gone out, I've met different people. It's been, pleasant experiences. I think just, the type and caliber of women that I'm looking for are more chill, more calm, more just soft, feminine, right? You think about it like in terms of the dating aspect of it all, in terms of finding your ideal mate, it's typically going to be always the opposite of who you are. And so if you're, big, strong, tough dude, you want a soft, feminine, docile woman, right? Yeah, I really haven't had any crazy experiences. I've met some people. I've had some good relationships. I've met some amazing people. We've had some great, connections. And so, yeah, I haven't had really a crazy experience. I think some people I've met that you definitely meet them and they're not what you expect. I haven't had any like catfishing stories, anything like that. But a lot of different people, different perspectives, different backgrounds. Some you mesh with, some you don't. It's been across the board for me where normally the people that I date are typically going to be more like conservative, where they
Maybe date to marry.
date to marry, and also they're not into like this whole woke stuff, right? Like this whole like liberal on the left, progressive, he, she acronyms or like whatever your pronouns and all that stuff. Even though, interestingly enough, I think, so I met this one gal who I was seeing for a little bit, and like she was on the other side. She was like the creative, artsy, kind of liberal, and we're not eye to eye on a lot of different things. We saw like different sides of the spectrum, but I think because of the tension that we built through that, I think is what kind of drew us together, even though we disagreed on a lot of different things. But yeah, I mean, I haven't had any crazy stories. Everybody that I've met and that I've dated and gone out with, they've been great people, great gals. There's just for whatever reason, one thing or another, it didn't lead to anything serious.
Were there any favorites, movies or superheroes? Because I remember like watching like Die Hard, Rambo, different things like that. The A-Team, even the show. So not just the movie. So all of these dudes were straight killers. They were they were huge. They were super famous. And then you can sort of see like what's another example? Spider-Man or different shows that come out, and like Netflix, the way they change up characters and stories as well, and different things like that. What is your take on that? Some of those experiences and why they sort of change those narratives and characters.
So, and you're referring to like making them a little bit more woke and like
right, and taking away those big masculine players that we had like in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I think it's just the society and like the liberal media. You think about back in the Roman times, right, where they had many years of prosperity, and then you get a peak, and then you kind of start going into a downfall, right? Where I think that sometimes they had like some rulers where the Romans had like the rulers that were like bisexual and like were soft feminine, and so the king, right, the ruler, the top dog, essentially his energy and all that aura all goes down into the rest of society, right? So I think it's just been where life has gotten so easy for people. Like, we have all of our basic needs met, right? To eat, to breathe, to, AC, all of that we kind of reach this level of like existentialism of like, why are we here? Questioning reality, and then like, I want to save the environment and all this stuff. And so all these different things have played a factor in like, the politically correct, right? Where if you can't say this because it's going to hurt my feelings, and there's a better way to say it, right? Even though, you're saying F off to somebody, right? You can say that in a very nice and articulate way. And I think that really is what stemmed the problem of going too far to the left and too progressive, where everybody's feelings are taken into play. They want to talk about men getting more into their feelings. Like, I think we need to understand as a society that we are, yes, we're dual in nature in terms of we have masculine and feminine energy, but men are going to naturally have more masculinity, more masculine energy, and obviously females are going to have that feminine. So some people are going to have more than others, but at the end of the day, masculinity is a superpower for men, as femininity is for women. And I think that is really what has hindered us as a society, is being able to take men and make them, talk about their feelings and make them feel like they're less than and they're just disposable. And you got to make sure that you talk a certain way and you're politically correct. So I think all of that has played a factor, and it's been the liberal media, the left, the progressives, and where the conservatives are more of like the dad figure, the disciplinarian, the authoritarian. It's almost kind of like a benevolent dictator. You think about Trump that just came into office. I think that's kind of how I see him, because he's America first. He's like, listen, why do we have all these dang red tapes? Let's say like in California, right, with all the wildfires and whatnot. Why do we have all these red tapes? Why does it take 18 months for people to do this and to get permits? Like, let's cut all that crap and let's do it tomorrow, right? So I think it's the left with a lot of their different woke mentality and woke antics, and that they're trying to consider people's feelings versus the facts.
And in terms of that, like you mentioned, like benevolent dictator, I always used to think about that in that situation where, like you mentioned, like ancient Rome, what's the expression? Give them a circus, give them bread, and they'll always be distracted, right? Yeah. So you see commonalities and trends over time. So my undergraduate degree was history, and a lot of times you see certain patterns, and you notice a trend, and you can see a change of characters, but the game is essentially, continuously the same. What are some of those patterns that you've noticed that, a positive trend in recent times, for the U.S., like you mentioned Trump, like what are some of those trends you see in the next few years for America in terms of, not just society, but economically as well, and hopefully some upwards trends that you notice? Yeah,
absolutely. I think Trump coming in is definitely going to be a game changer for the world as a whole, especially for the U.S. He's brought on a lot of different investors to invest billions upon billions of dollars. He's cutting the red tape on a lot of different issues and a lot of problems where it makes business less easy to conduct, right? Where he's making it business friendly. And what people don't understand, I think, in terms of like the middle class and whatnot, that are just kind of regular working people, which, obviously there's nothing wrong with being a regular working person, right? You're part of society, you're part of the economy. I think the problem is they're always looking at, well, hey, they're not for the middle class and not for the normal working people, they're for businesses. But what they don't understand is that it all trickles down, right? You have a business, you have a company, they hire employees, and when they can operate more efficiently with less restrictions, they can pay less in taxes, that's ultimately going to all trickle down into the employees, into the people, right? So I think that a lot of people are really focusing on that, like the normal working class people, but they don't really see the big picture. They can't zoom out. And I get it, right? You do think about a normal 9-to-5 person. They're going to work, they're coming home, they're maybe watching the news, they're unwinding, maybe watching CNN, maybe watching Fox, and they're just kind of getting, some normal information. And so they're looking at Trump and they're like, he's coming in for the business and all that stuff, and like all the billionaires are going to, reap the benefits, but it's all going to trickle down. I love what Trump has been doing in terms of like, he's done more in like his first week than like the entire presidency previous, right? I love the fact that he's coming in, he's taking the reins, he's going to work, he's putting in the executive orders, he's not wasting any time, and he's making things run more efficiently. Like, let's remove this red tape, right? Let's remove all these, issues, problems, and let's just get stuff done, right? So another thing that he's doing and that he recently announced is the Stargate project with AI. And so basically they're investing $500 billion into the US having AI infrastructure. And so I think that's marvelous. I think that's fantastic. I think the US is going to have so much money coming into it, flooding into it from all over the place. We're going to have a glorious, prosperous next 40 years. I think AI, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that really starts to come in and have a major impact in society. I think we're going to see here in the next 2 to 4 years, AGI, ASI, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, where you can literally have ChatGPT, I guess you could call it, language model, be able to take tasks and execute just as a regular individual, right? So, you think about yourself going out and looking for booking a trip. Let's say you want to book a trip to Mexico, or you want to book a trip to, whatever, Europe, a different place, or you want to write some code or whatever, right? That particular AI could literally do all of that by itself and do it better than like a normal person. So I think we're going to see some crazy technology growth here in the next 2 to 4 years. I think we're going to have a lot of biotechnology growth as well with reverse aging, a lot of health related type of AI intelligence and infrastructure around different vaccines to remove cancer, literally reverse aging and make you feel and look like you're in your early 20s. I think this is literally 2 to 4 years away. I think people don't really think about the impact of that this is going to have. I think people are underestimating AI and how fast and how revolutionary it's going to be and how it's been the last 2 years. So you think about the last 2 years, it's had exponential growth. And with all these other players coming into space, especially with China, right? China just recently came out with I think it's called DeepSeek, and it's a model that's similar to the ChatGPT OpenAI model, and I think it cost them like $6 million to develop, right? So like a small fraction of a percentage of like what ChatGPT spent, like I think billions on,
Right.
and that's kind of what the Chinese do, right? They come in, they take technology from the US or different places, and they just build upon that, right? And so they're not really the innovators. They're not really the people that come in and like come up with crazy ideas and technology. They're more of like, hey, let's take what's already existing and build upon that. I get it, right? But I honestly think AI is going to be a big game changer here in the next 2 to 4 years. And I think people are really underestimating and not really thinking about the impact that it's going to have. I'd say in the next 4 years, life is going to look vastly different than it is now for most people.
Yeah, you touched on a few things. I think health is a huge sector. I think they estimate that a lot of us, that haven't reached 40, 50 years old yet, have a huge chance of having a much higher life expectancy than previous generations. And then you also mentioned with China's innovation, or quote unquote not so innovative. It's mostly, like you said, piggybacking off of our innovation. How do you think that can be tackled? Obviously, like you said, Jones bringing some investors, like over 600 billion from Saudi Arabia and these different people, and hopefully reinvesting that into tech and AI. What are some practical implications of AI in terms of utilizing it for business, utilizing it maybe in the day-to-day use, maybe some personal experiences you've had, using certain apps or certain platforms? How do you see that? How do you see businesses and people taking advantage of it rather than seeing it as from a doomsday perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I use it on a daily basis pretty much. ChatGPT, where it's currently at and where it really came out at to be in the very beginning model, I think it serves a purpose of being able to ask it questions, gather information, gather data, gather research. A lot of what I do is coming through with different marketing strategies, like asking it, because really the biggest thing here is the prompts, is the information that you feed it, right? The questions that you ask it, that's really what's going to dictate the information that you get. So it's really about the questions that you can ask. And so a lot of what I use it for is for marketing strategies, getting different perspectives, getting different insights into different things that I'm curious about, interested about. Like, I think recently I was asking it, so where do you see technology heading in the next 2 to 4 years? When do you see the inflection point being for like ASI, right? And when do you think we can reverse aging? So all these different things of like just curiosity, but also looking at it from like, what does this AI think? And how does it see it in terms of technology improving, right? Growing, expanding. Businesses can use AI for a variety of different areas and methods. I think automation is a big area. A lot of people do a lot of manual tasks with data entry, data collection, gathering, analyzing. I think that with AI and ChatGPT, you can really be able to get data and information to be automated and gathered and executed upon, maybe, even blog posts, content pieces written, created, all through different automation systems that are built that are using ChatGPT as like a back-end model So a lot of it has to do with content creation, efficiency, productivity, writing different content pieces in terms of topics. Like, you think about people had to, before ChatGPT, had to completely come up with their own topics, their own ideas, content pieces. Now you can just feed it some big picture ideas and say, hey, give me some topics, frameworks around how to make money online, business, entrepreneurship, health, fitness. And you can get immediately flooded with, tons of ideas, tons of perspectives. And it's almost like your personal assistant, really, right? That's kind of how I use it. But yeah, businesses can leverage the automation side of being able to create tasks and automations where there's little to no human involvement, right? And that can reduce, the cost of, bringing on team members, employees, right? But I think the automations are probably one of the top big things. Think about agents as well. Agents just got released from ChatGPT and then AI, and I think that's going to be the next big thing. Next big thing for AI is going to be the agents, where you can have agents that specialize in certain specific areas. Where, let's say, an agent that focuses on marketing strategy, you have an agent that focuses on business development, and so all of those are going to be extremely useful to businesses instead of having to hire individual people to fill those roles.
Right. You can leverage definitely, something that's specialized rather than looking at ChatGPT overall. That agent can be specialized in specific fields, be trained on specific data, and just get more and more hyper personalized, where it's super relatable to what that business, is actually doing, their infrastructure and systems and whatnot. What are some ways that, obviously you say you treat it like a personal assistant, which I think is the right way to go about it, is to use it for the little things. Are there any things like within Kobe, for example, or with clients, what are some ways that is there a fear of using more AI in the marketing and digital business world? Or do some people still prefer, certain things to be manual, like outreaching, for example? Or what are some thoughts on that?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's really about the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And so I don't think businesses are going to be worried about, and we've seen they're worried about the how it's done, right? It's more of what's the outcome that I'm generating here, and am I solving my problem, right? That's the biggest thing here. Not necessarily the technology or what it's doing, or this and that it's like quote unquote eliminating jobs, which inevitably it will. It's just a natural part of it. But no, there's really no pushback. It's really about, there's a lack of understanding of AI and technology. I think because we're so in the initial first kind of stages of it, right? You think about like a bell curve, right? And where kind of naturally you have in the middle is kind of like the inflection point of where the society kind of adapts it, right? I think right now we're in the very beginning portion of it where it's kind of like a flat line a little bit, right? And it's like just your early adopters, right? They're coming in, they're trying out new different AI tools, using AI technology, different agents, different things you can do with it. Sora just came out, right? Where you can create the video content, where you can create different product videos, explainer videos, where Hollywood now is kind of like freaking out, right? So I think that at the end of the day, people just are not fully versed and know enough about how it works, because you think about the average business owner is just focused on the business and growing that and focusing on that. I think the smart ones are really looking at how they can integrate AI into the business, but I would say it's more of a lack of education at this point.
And you think that's the biggest gap right now, is sort of targeting, maybe people are aware of benefits but don't necessarily know where to start?
I think it's a combination of the two simultaneously, of just like, people, it's like this buzzword AI, right? And AI has been around for a while. I remember, AI when it first kind of came out, and the first kind of iteration of it was machine learning, where you just kind of trained these models based off of data. But now, when you have the ability for the data to be used as a training model to then have itself learn from the data itself, that really was the game changer. So I think it's more of just people hear this buzzword, there's not enough education on it, and I think people are more focused on just running their business than learning about new AI trends, and especially how fast moving it is, right?
Right.
You can have every week where there's a new feature, there's a new functionality. So we're at the early adopter stage, and I think probably within the next probably 3 to 4 years, it's going to be kind of starting to get into like that bell curve of where it's mass adoption. But I think now we're very much so in its infancy.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, like the way it's fast paced, like a lot of times when I try a new AI tool, even though there's discounts for getting the yearly versus monthly, I know there's no point of me paying yearly. I want to pay monthly because I don't know if in 3 months from now a way better tool comes out than the one I'm currently using, or maybe their system goes down and their customer service isn't that great. You know what I mean? So there's different benefits like that. Like, it's just because it's so fast paced, even when they do offer yearly discounts, it's no point simply because of that.
Yeah, I think the content game is going to change as well here pretty soon. There's this company called HeyGen, and they allow you to essentially create a video, and they will essentially give you a mock-up persona of yourself, avatar. They will make then a video of you just by putting in text, right? A whole new video of you actually acting it out, like you're actually creating a whole new video. So I think here very soon, we're gonna have where you can create one video of yourself talking for like 3 or 4 minutes. The model's gonna get trained on that data of yourself, and then you're going to then be able to come up with new content and just give it its prompt. Here's the script for this new content piece, and then that avatar, AI avatar, is going to then talk about that content and actually, you know, act that out as if you actually recorded that yourself. And it's gonna look like it's actually you, and you're saying it, you're doing it, and it's going to revolutionize content marketing, where you're gonna be able to create just one piece of content and then have that be used as an avatar, where you'll be able to create unlimited amounts of content just by prompts.
Can scale like crazy.
Yeah, so it's coming very soon. HeyGen has a lot of new features. They actually reached out to me directly about some features that they wanted to have us test out. So they are at the cutting edge, and I think that very soon, like I said, I mean, we're gonna have some technological innovations through AI that's really going to change the game here, and have a lot of industries kind of think about what they're doing and how they need to pivot and innovate themselves to stay in the game.
Right, fire, bro. I'm sure you can think back to certain initiatives, certain jumps you've taken. You know, what was a nervous journey or something that was like risk taking in your entrepreneurship journey?
I would say just even moving to Miami, coming out here from really Washington State. I initially moved out to San Diego, and San Diego was just not cutting it. The whole pandemic with everything being closed, all the rules, the regulations, folks going to the bathroom outside of the building. It was just not what I expected. Love the area in terms of the scenery. There's a great park out there, Balboa Park, a lot of great architecture, but it wasn't what I had hoped it was, what I initially thought. And so then I just moved over to Miami to really kind of change up the scenery for me and to take a bigger risk. Because I know in Miami, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of folks making moves, a lot of big players. And I wanted to make the move to kind of feel part of that energy and that vibe,
right,
that connection. And it was a big risk for me because, you know, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. It was literally by myself, just moving over here and just figuring it out.
Nice. And you never even visited the city before? Did you already check it out a couple times, or you just decided to move?
No, it was literally spur of the moment. Like 2020, when I moved out to San Diego, July, and then 2021, January 1st, I made the decision to come out to Miami. I didn't know anybody. It was just like, hey, I need to change the scenery. A lot of entrepreneurs I've been following had moved over to Miami, and I'm like, I need to follow that trend, see what it's about. And of course, the Latin culture, the weather, the vibe, you know, beautiful women, beautiful people, right? That's really what drew me to it, and just being able to build the networks and connections, right? I knew that if I came out here, I was going to figure it out. I was going to figure it out in terms of how I was going to be successful, because at that point, you know, I had a couple of different businesses running. It wasn't anything super massively successful and wildly successful, but it was a good starting point. And I knew coming out here to Miami, I would be exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different environments, groups, and I would meet somebody, or I would be able to make a connection that would be able to get me to that next level.
So what were you working on when you first came to Miami, and what are you currently working on right now?
When I first came to Miami, I had these online courses that I had created. Basically, I had courses in marketing, sales, entrepreneurship, I had courses in tech, AI, machine learning, coding, development. And what I did for a lot of those is I partnered with other professional individuals in the space. And so they were the ones actually who had the expertise, the credibility. I came in more talking about the big picture, the high level. Hey, this is what we're going to cover. This is what we're going to go over. And really just talking about everything at that very big picture, high level perspective. And then these individuals came in and were actually doing the work and like showing behind the scenes, right, over the shoulder, like this is how you code a website, this is how you build a website, this is how you can do machine learning, this is how you analyze data. And so I leveraged their expertise, and we did some sort of profit sharing where they created all the content, I paid them, but we did kind of a revenue share in terms of the sales that were coming in. And during that time, it was the pandemic, right? So everything online was skyrocketing. Education, online learning, anything that you had that could be sold online just went up to the roof, right? You think about Amazon, you think about everything online. Folks were just literally making millions upon millions, and even in Jeff Bezos' case, Amazon, multi-billions in just the online surge. And so that really accelerated the online kind of e-commerce. Now in terms of kind of what I'm working on, I have my main agency that I work with and that I own and operate, Copy Digital. That's one of the things that I was able to accomplish coming out to Miami, right? 2021. I took a big risk, figured out a way to make this acquisition using none of my own money, using other people's money, leveraging that, and being able to acquire a 7-figure agency. So now what I'm focused on is the agency is a major player, major focus for me. I have other portfolio companies that I have minor equity stakes in that I don't really manage or focus on. I just kind of get distributions. And then I have my Mastering Digital Business Acquisitions program as well, where I help people get access to funding, 0% funding, to where they can get 100 to 250,000 in 0% APR funding. And then we help them find, evaluate, and be able to acquire an online business using that funding. And so that's a done-for-you program where we provide mentorship, training, consulting, and then also we have another business that we're focusing on as well, which is the Kobe franchise. This is another area where myself and a business partner that I previously acquired the Kobe agency from, we partnered together and we decided to start a Kobe franchise, essentially leveraging our existing infrastructure, our sales, marketing, all the systems and everything that you would have within a franchise model. We put that into Kobe. And so those are the three main kind of areas that I'm focused on at this particular juncture.
So you're keeping yourself pretty busy.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, man. Pretty much phone calls, Zoom meetings, communicating with the teams. I'm making sure everything's pretty much getting done, getting handled. So yeah, definitely keeping myself busy. I think it's important to keep yourself busy and occupied because it's easy to get distracted, especially out here in Miami, right? Beautiful weather, the culture, the vibe, the women, the beach, right? You can easily get distracted out here by just kind of going to the beach and just hanging out and just chilling, right? So I think the energy of Miami is very much so forward thinking, forward pushing, innovative. There's a lot of competition, but it also serves to really have a lot of inspiration because there's a lot of people out here that have Bentleys, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and they're just kind of like another day in the neighborhood scenario, right? I remember growing up in like the Seattle, Washington, and it was actually a little bit north of Seattle in this little town called Marysville. And even in Seattle, right, all those different areas that I grew up in originally, like if you had a sports car or like a Lambo or a Ferrari around, you would think that it was like this big, huge anomaly and like, who is this famous person, right? And people would be like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, there's a Ferrari, there's a Lamborghini. So coming out here to where it's like another day in the neighborhood, really, I think, at least for me, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it kind of puts you in the mindset of like, yes, I belong here. And this is where I need to be because everybody's pushing. A lot of folks doing things online out here. So if you have the ability to move to anywhere in the country and you can work online, you can work for yourself, you're doing, what you're doing there. Maybe you have a remote job. I would say if you can come down to Miami, this is a place to be. It's a lot of folks out here doing a lot of things, making a lot of big moves, and the energy of the city will really put you in a position to want to get better and get to that next level. There's so much that can be done here and learned and connected with people and networking. So I would absolutely say Miami, if you can make it out here, if you can bring yourself to live out here, if you have the means, I would absolutely recommend that to all digital entrepreneurs.
I agree with that, because I remember the first time I came, I was like 18. And I remember I'd been in Tampa my whole life, and I was just like, okay. And I was moving to Spain, so I had to come to the Spanish embassy. And I think since then, the past 7 years or so, I think maybe twice someone has spoken to me in English in Miami. Like maybe 2 or 3 times. So there's people in Tampa, I know, they're like, oh, I didn't like living in Miami. I was like, no, you didn't like living in a 2-mile radius around Brickell. A lot of them not Latinos, they don't speak Spanish. So I'm like, you missing out, because like Montreal in Canada is a cool city, but if you know English and French, it's an even cooler city. And I think Miami is kind of like that too, where in order to tap into a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of people and relationships, it's almost like, well, if you don't know Spanish, I don't know, just something about it. It's I think the only other example I could think of is Montreal. It's a bilingual city. Like some people only know French in Montreal, they miss out on a lot. Some people only know English in Montreal, and they miss out on a lot. But the people that know both, which I would say is about half, those are the people that really have the most fun in Montreal. But going back to, you said with the Kobe Digital and the acquisition, so and you were talking about not using other people's money. What does that mean, and what were the steps you took to acquire the first business, the first acquisition?
Yeah, so in terms of other people's money, I think there's this notion in America and just, I guess, in the world in general, that debt is bad, right? You think about a lot of shows that are on YouTube, or just people in general, when you talk about getting debt, getting credit cards, getting loans, there's always a negative connotation to it. And I think it's because people don't have the discipline and the understanding of how to manage and leverage the credit, the debt, right? To actually acquire income producing assets. I mean, I was the same way. When I first got my credit card, when I was like, I think 19 or 20, I just bought a bunch of stuff, right? And just like stuff that I didn't really need, but it was almost like I just had the money there and I felt like I could just use it and then I didn't have to pay it back, right? I was very irresponsible. And I think that most people are naturally just generally consumers. So they're going to buy stuff that they consume and they use. And that's really not going to bring them any additional value. So with OPM, right, other people's money, this is where you are leveraging the banks to essentially give you access to credit that then you can leverage and utilize to go out and buy different income producing assets, such as businesses. Online businesses is really my main focus. In this scenario with Kobe, what I essentially did is I was able to go out and get credit cards and different loans. I would apply for them simultaneously. So I had about 4 or 5 different cards that I applied for. I applied for 3 different personal loans, and getting a combination of those, right? Because some of those are going to get denied, some are going to get approved. But the intention is to have them all add up to 100,000, 150,000 and more, and was able to use that cash that was, none of my own, right? To put down as a down payment to the business. I was able to then pay the business off using its own profits. So the business was paid over a period of time and it paid for itself essentially. So if you think about it, I was able to buy this marketing agency, Kobe, using none of my own money, using zero out of pocket. And I think that's the biggest thing that people need to understand with leverage and credit, is that it's a useful tool. The technical term of what I did is called a leverage buyout, LBO, where you're using debt leverage to buy an asset. And there's a lot of examples of this in the different acquisition space. A lot of different companies use this strategy. But I think on the personal level, a lot of people don't even really understand the credit system and how their credit score affects everything. So I think being able to have an understanding how the credit system works, how to leverage debt to be able to use that to acquire income producing assets. And in my case, I was able to acquire a 7-figure agency.
Nice. I like that a lot. Like that distinction you talk about between the experience, the credit card, normally thinking about it from a consumer perspective, buying essentially liabilities versus looking at what's an income producing asset. And how did you were able to come across Kobe? Like, how can someone, find a business for sale? Are there sites for this? Like, I know Flip is a common one, but specifically with Kobe, what was that sort of experience in building that relationship with that owner for you able to mix between, the credit cards, the loans, as well as the seller financing?
Yeah, so a lot of it is really just cold outreach. There's a lot of different sites online that you can go and find different business listings for sale. There's Flippa, there's BizBuySell, there's Acquire.com. There's so many different platforms that you can go and find different types of online businesses and just businesses in general. And so for me, I was doing a combination of cold outreach to different existing marketing agencies, and then also looking at different online listing sites as well. So I was really kind of spreading the message wide and just kind of seeing who was going to bite, who was going to be able to give me an opportunity to, showcase that they're interested in selling or they're currently in the market. And so that's how I came across this particular scenario. And I think that ties into understanding what the buyer's intent is in terms of, from my perspective of, I want to buy this business. I want to make sure that I can buy a good, solid business. And then also from the seller side, right? They typically are going to want to sell to somebody that has their best interest in mind,
right,
in terms of being able to keep running the business and, take it to that next level. In my scenario with Kobe, the previous owner had a lot of different offers on the table. And the problem was that they were asking for him to just literally close down his business, close down the agency, right? After years and years of, putting the time, energy, and resources, blood, sweat, and tears. It was his baby, right? And so they wanted to just kind of come in, buy his clients, and then shut down the entire website and the whole business. But he was not okay with that. And he even had higher offers than what I offered him, right?
Okay.
And so, but because we had that initial connection, I told him kind of on my vision of like, hey, listen, I want to continue to grow this and go out and actually acquire additional agencies, right? And so we had a lot of rapport, a lot of understanding in terms of what he wanted to do. And he was very flexible and adaptable to me. And so he was willing to take a lesser offer from me with different terms that wouldn't normally be had in terms of, the seller finance, right, and the 10 to 15% in terms of down payment, right? Closing payment. Normally you're going to see, if you're going to use any type of seller finance, you're going to see at least 30+% at minimum in terms of a closing payment, right?
Okay.
So if you're buying $1 million business, most people at minimum are going to require and ask for $300K at closing, right? But in special circumstances, right, you build a lot of rapport, a lot of connection with these sellers, you can come in and put down a smaller down payment, right? And then be able to perhaps tie the actual additional amount to the performance of the business using earnouts as well if we hit certain revenue numbers, right? Because then that also puts it into the hands of the buyer being able to execute, but also into the court of the seller in terms of, hey, if you're saying that your business is as good as it is and that you say it is, then we should have no problem hitting these numbers, right?
Gotcha.
So I think that's an important distinction, is just like really understanding what these sellers want, what's important to them. Is it money? The famous phrase in this space is, what's more important to you, how much money you get or when you get the money, right? And so that will allow you to really understand where their head is at. Are they looking for just the most amount of money? They don't care who takes over, give me the most amount of money. Or are they like, listen, I'm getting different offers from people, even more money, but I'm afraid they're gonna mess up my business. Or I don't think they're the right buyers. So you have the ability to really come in and be seen as kind of that trusted pair of hands, right? Of like, hey, listen, I get it. We want to get this business. We want to do X, Y, Z. We want to grow this market. We want to grow this area, right? I think that's really music to the ears of the sellers, especially those that have had these businesses for many years and there's a personal connection to them, right? Because especially, I would say under 5 million in revenue, you're going to find a lot of these sellers have personal ties and personal connections to these businesses. So it's important to really understand their motivations, what's important to them, why they're selling, and that why you are the perfect individual or company or group to come in and take over the business.
Got you. So why would you say specifically the one under 5? What is it about the businesses over 5 million revenue where they're not as personal, not as emotionally attached?
It's not a specific number. I think it's kind of more of a range. I would say once you hit maybe that 5, and it can be maybe 4 or something, right? But I think I'm saying 5 because I think at that point you're probably even not really involved in any day-to-day interactions.
Okay.
So you're not really in the trenches. You don't really see the business in terms of you being involved in it on a day-to-day basis. And so you're able to kind of take a step back and kind of zoom out and look at it from the lens of like, just this is a business, right? Mm-hmm. It's its own entity. And obviously that's how it should be treated all the time. However, I think that at that point, 4 to 5 range, you start to really kind of remove your personal perspective and just opinions in terms of like, this is my baby, this and that, and you start looking at it more from like a business executive perspective, right? Because somebody who's doing, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 million, their business, they're probably going to want obviously the most amount of money. They may not have the personal ties, right? It depends, but I would say as you get higher in terms of revenue, mm-hmm. there is lesser chance that you're going to feel people compelled to call it their baby and be really kind of entrenched in it. Because there's so many, you talk about, scale, operations, scalability, it completely removes them from the operation. So I think those higher numbers get people to really have a better perspective in terms of them not holding it close tight to them.
Gotcha. Okay. So based off of your experiences with leveraging, the loans, the credit, and buying your own business, you're now helping other people do the same. Acquiring, 0% funding,
Yep.
Searching for businesses. What does that process look like, and what does that offer look like?
Yeah. So our Mastering Digital Business Acquisitions program essentially is where we help people, regardless of where they're at, in terms of if they already have an existing business, they're already maybe doing some investing, they have access to some capital themselves, they maybe have a little bit of a nest egg or something, right? Mm-hmm. Or they have at least 700 credit score, right? So that's kind of like the demographic and the group that we're looking for in terms of got to have a 700 credit score. And really that's going to be the main criteria, right? Because that's what's going to allow you to get funding. So basically the process is we help people essentially go out and get access to 100,000 to 250,000 in 0% credit. Some of that can be combined also with loan stacking, mm-hmm. where we're able to go out and you're essentially applying for multiple loans simultaneously. Typically you can get anywhere between 20 to 50K each loan. So if you stack multiple loans, right, you can easily get another 100,000, 150,000. And so we're helping them get access to the funding. And then from there, then we help them in terms of the mentorship, the training, actually learn how to find, how to evaluate, how to negotiate, and really how to close these deals. And so it's a step-by-step training where we essentially walk them through the entire process A to Z, where to find these businesses, how to properly evaluate them, what type of business models are going to be the best, right? And this is going to be strictly in the online realm, right? This is not going to be where, we're going after different types of mom and pop shops, local businesses that are retail, plumbing businesses. There's like this local HVAC, right? A lot of local businesses that you normally see.
No, you're doing just online.
All of our focus is going to be on the online space because that's what we believe is the quickest and best way to get the financial independence, because that gives you the ability to then also live from anywhere in the world, right? And work from anywhere in the world.
Location freedom.
So that's really what, exactly. Location freedom. That's exactly what we're looking to really help people achieve, is the location freedom, ability to make money online and work from anywhere, travel. There's a lot of people that promote, will teach you how to buy a business in general. Mom and pop shop, HVAC, there's the laundromats, there's all different sectors, right? For us, I think the differentiator is we're helping you get the funding first, and then we're going to help you actually go out and find, evaluate, negotiate, and close on these deals. I think that's the missing piece, especially with a lot of different people also out there offering this type of service of funding. A lot of times it's like, hey, we can get you the funding, but then it's like, well, what do you do after, right? What do you do with the money? Mm-hmm. And so we have a very specific solution for people where it's completely done for you and walk them through exactly how to go through the process. And then we have the mentorship, right? We have the group chat. You can ask questions. They're going to be myself and other team members in there asking questions, giving insights. Somebody has a question on a deal. Hey, I'm looking at this deal. Here's the numbers. What do you think, right? So it's a mentorship. And so we guide people from the whole entire process of getting the funding to actually being able to find, acquire the business, and then transitioning that business, right? Completely done for you, A to Z, funding and acquisition training.
What sort of, I know you said online businesses, but are there any specific types you guys focus on, or what is the range of digital businesses? What do those look like? E-com stores, SaaS companies?
Yeah, I would say there's really a wide mix. You think about anything online, okay? There's the e-commerce sector, which you can have like different Shopify stores. You're selling a physical, tangible product. You're sending it to people all over the world. The best ones are going to be the ones that have a brand already established, and maybe they order in bulk from China, and then they keep it here in the US, or they go to like the Amazon FBA and they send it to Amazon, and then they hold the product in the inventory and they ship it out to the customers. So there's e-commerce where you have the physical tangible products, which is also under drop shipping, where you're also, let's say, buying it from somewhere and then they're shipping it to the customer. There's SaaS, right? Software as a service. You think about software like Dropbox, any type of software solution where you go and you are signing up and you're using their platform, their dashboard, right?
Right.
Then you have affiliate sites. Think about Amazon affiliate sites where they have like different blogs. They give different recommendations on what's the best kitchenware, what's the best coffee maker, right? A lot of those blog affiliate based websites rely on SEO, organic traffic. And so people go on there, they learn about different coffee makers or whatever the best coffee maker is. There's a review, they click on the link, and then they get a small commission every time somebody purchases. So there's the affiliates, there's the blogs itself, where the blogs may talk about maybe like scuba diving stuff, right? Scuba diving gear, and they give reviews on scuba diving, and then they have like relationships and partnerships with different scuba diving retailers that then they'll get a commission when somebody purchases as well, right? Then you have like the different types of online businesses that could be on coaching, consulting, right? You think about somebody has a coaching brand, a training, somebody has a training on, like, let's say, how to become a software developer, right? That's an online business that somebody has. It's a training system, and where you can come in and acquire that as well. So it's really across the board. Anything, I like to look at myself and really focus in on online digital services. So anything that you can sell in terms of a service-based business where you're providing consulting, marketing, technical support.
Right.
I think that's going to be the best area, at least for me. I mean, listen, there's a lot of brands out there that are in the e-com space, and it's not one that's necessarily better than the other. It's more a preference. So I think that's important. There's a lot of e-commerce stores that have great brands, great recognition, that are making millions, right? My focus right now, and the reason why, is because in terms of digital service businesses, because there's really no amount that you can charge. There's no like set price, right? You have like an e-commerce store, you have a lot of competitors, and you have a certain price that you can charge. And if you go too high, you overprice yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you go too low, then they could start to question the quality. In the digital service business space, it's all about positioning. So you can charge what somebody charges $500 for, you could charge $10,000 for, right? And it's the same exact service, but it's really positioning, it's credibility, it's posturing, it's a lot of the selling is what is the difference maker. So that's why I like the service space, is that there's really no limit to what you can charge, because it's really all about just positioning and brand credibility.
And when it comes to that sort of business model, you've obviously, Kobe's a marketing agency. And then now you said about a franchise. So obviously you're helping people buy any type of online business, but you have your expertise being in the marketing sector and in the digital service. So now with a franchise model, that's another option, right? Let's say someone has a background in marketing or whatever, and they're not necessarily looking for an e-commerce SaaS company, and they want to be able to use the reputation that you built off of with Kobe. What is a franchise model? Because obviously franchise, typically in my mind, I think of, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, right? Those are franchises. The Ace Hardware, that's a franchise. So what does a digital business franchise look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So you think about us as an agency, Kobe Digital, we have all of the infrastructure, the teams, the systems, the processes, the SOPs, the proposal decks, the onboarding, the training. So So we have the entire infrastructure built out already, right? And that's through years of refining and perfecting. And so basically, what we're able to do with the franchise model, Kobe Franchise, is take all of that infrastructure, take all of those systems, the processes, the capabilities, the proposal decks, all of that infrastructure, and be able to then apply that to a franchisee and their marketing agency, right? So they're able to leverage all of our case studies, all of our different teams, our services, our reputation. And so I think from the franchise model, it's really them being able to step into a turnkey business in a box. Think about it from like, you have a nice box, it's wrapped up with a nice bow tie on it, and you open it up and it's everything you need, right? All the processes, systems, the proposals, the case studies, website, everything. And I think for a lot of people, that's a great avenue, right? Because you think about myself and just other people, normal entrepreneurship is viewed as like you have this grandiose idea, you just start somewhere, you have, this thought process of like, man, I can invent this little gadget or gizmo and it's going to change the world and it's going to sell millions, right? And then you don't really ever even know if somebody is actually interested in the product, right? So with a franchise type of model, you're essentially leveraging all of the infrastructure that particular business has, and you're able to take that in day one, be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah, it's a proven concept.
Proven concept, proven model, right? You think about there's a lot of different types of offers out there that say, hey, we'll build you a marketing agency. A lot of those people are just really fresh. They're new. They don't have the track record, the years of experience. They don't have the brand reputation. Like that's a big thing for us is we thought about this, after many, many years of being in the space and building up a credibility and a track record and a brand, right, that is world renowned and known so that people could come in that want to be franchisees and leverage all of that. So they can come in to a proven model day one and hit the ground running, and where we provide all of the training, the consulting, the infrastructure, for them to start a proven business model.
Fire, bro. I like that. We
Absolutely.
have the funding, acquiring businesses. We have the franchise, and then we have as well the main Kobe marketing agency as well as the portfolio of digital businesses. Now, when you first got Kobe, did you always envision yourself dabbling in and acquiring more digital businesses and building out that portfolio? Or is that something that just sort of happened as time progressed?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I would say it's been the vision since day one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I first came across like mergers and acquisitions, and it's really acquisitions because mergers rarely happen because they're a pain in the ass and they're a pain in the neck to actually execute on because there's different cultures and a lot of clashing. But when I really came across kind of the M&A space, I always knew that I wanted to build a portfolio of businesses, and I saw it as like the cheat code, the shortcut to success, where you can buy something that's already proven and you can then put those into a portfolio and be able to then down the road exit from that portfolio of having 4 or 5, 10 different businesses in there and exit that portfolio in one full swoop, right? And that's always been the vision. Dan Pena, somebody that I follow and have followed for a while, he's like a old kind of M&A guy who invented the QLA model, Quantum Leap Advantage model, where basically he talks about this exact process of like going out, building a team, going out there looking for deals, using bank financing to get access to to credit, and doing essentially a leverage buyout where you're using the bank's money, you're using debt, credit to buy these, and then putting them all into a portfolio. So yeah, it's always been the vision. And so even now, where I partner with some individuals and we go out and do acquisitions together. So like, somebody who wants to work with me one-on-one directly, that's a different package, right? In terms of where you want to work with me directly one-on-one, you want me to help you and get on calls with the sellers, you want to help me negotiate with you, be part of the deal, right?
Investigated the due diligence.
That's going to be a separate service that I'm going to offer. And it's going to be kind of a very white glove, high touch, exclusive type of service that I'm going to provide, right? And obviously, I'm going to get a portion of the equity in the business, And I think it's going to be a win-win scenario for those that want to work a little bit more closely to me. But yes, ultimately, the vision has always been to acquire as many as possible, as fast as humanly possible, and to exit for that big paycheck.
And that exit, what does that look like? Is it like a private equity firm? Is it like a bigger investor?
Yeah, it's going to be to a private equity firm. My business partner, Aria, who is in the space, a lot of like in the acquisition space, finance space, tech space, based out of LA and Vegas. He knows a lot of private equity firms, groups already. This is a massive space for these markets, especially in the recurring revenue space, right? I would say at the end of the day, the agency space is a great space. I want to come in and really start to partner with individuals a lot more, right? I have some that I've worked with, but a big focus of mine this year is also going to be focusing on working a lot with individuals one-on-one directly, so that we can go after a little bit bigger deals and where we can leverage my experience and have kind of more of a close-knit relationship.
Got you. So yeah, you'll be able to, expand your portfolio, help people get their own business, as well as, maintain equity in a wide range of different things. I like that.
Yeah, and so then that ultimately increases my portfolio as well.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to be, heavily involved in all of these. So yeah, I mean, typically it's going to be where we have people coming in through the initial offer where we're helping you get the funding, giving you step-by-step training. There's a mentorship, right? But then that VIP, if you want that VIP treatment, right, and work with me directly one-on-one, that's going to be a separate service. But I think the value is going to be there. Absolutely.